on today. We say Todah Rabbah to the Most High Yahuwah, who's given us life, health, and strength, and He's given us another day that we can work this thing out. We can work it out with fear and with trembling. So we welcome all those who are in the digital house, those that are coming in on the platforms that we're on. We say shalom to you, and we know that Yah is in the house because this is Yah's house, and we put his name on there, and in First Chronicles chapter 14. Is it First Chronicles? Chapters 16. Well, anyway, he said he had placed his name in the house, and 2 Chronicles 7:16. He says, "For now have I chosen and sanctified this house, that my name may be there forever, and my eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually." So this is Yah's house. His eyes are upon this house. His eyes are upon you, those who are carrying his name, saying that you belong to Yahusha. It is commanded upon us. There is a standard of life. There's obedience. First of all, there's obedience that is expected of us. He does expect us to obey his commands. He expects us to obey his covenant. He expects us to obey his voice. And those who are obedient unto his voice, if you've been born again of water and spirit, and you've been born again of the Ruach, you are led by the Ruach, and you are on pace, and you're in a place to where we're looking for something better, something beyond what we actually know today. There's got to be something more than what we have right now. Shaul said, for I reckon that the suffering of this present time is not even worthy to be compared to the glory that's going to be revealed in us. So there is something that's beyond this time. And like Shaul said, even the sufferings and everything that we're going through now, we know that there is something beyond this. And so that's what we're looking to, but it's not for everybody, and there is a hierarchy in the Most High Yahuwah. There is a hierarchy in what we call the Shamayim. Even our basic understanding of Torah, which is given to us by a heathen nation and a heathen culture, it's hard for us to grasp the hierarchy with Elohim, with Yahuwah, and with what is coming. It's difficult for us to consume that, mainly because of how we absorb the teaching and how it's being taught. In Torah, there's a lot of secrets in Torah. There's a lot of things that's very obvious. The 10 Commands are very obvious. When he speaks from the Shamayim and he tells you what he wants you to do, as he gives you a message or something, it's very obvious. But then there's a lot of things that's very, very dark. There's a lot of things, and when I say dark, I don't mean dark in an evil way. I mean things that's not easily understood. If you can think of it like this way, you've got space and then you've got deep space. Well, you've got Yah, you got Torah, then you got deep Yah. There's some deep things in Yah that goes beyond the surface. And even Shaul tells us in 1 Corinthians 2nd chapter, it's his Ruach that searches the deep things of Elohim. So there's deep space, there's deep Yah. There's some things that's way out there that's beyond our comprehension, that only Yah can open it up and bring it to you. And so when we get things on the surface, and there's basic teaching, there's basic things, basic Christianity, there's basic things, but then there's things that if you want to know more and go further in Yahuwah, there's things that's hidden in Torah. things that's hidden in Torah. We've been talking about. There's some things I want to continue on today, and where do I begin? Okay, let's go to First Yahuchanan. I'll just set this. We'll set course here. We kind of read this before. First Yahuchanan, chapter 3 and verse number 1. Behold, what manner of love Ahav, Abba, hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called. Notice now, called Ben Elohim. We should be called Ben Elohim. Therefore, the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Beloved, now are we the Ben Elohim, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. It doth not yet appear, even though we are called Ben Elohim, we're called his sons. And when I say sons, it means daughters as well. If you look that up, it means daughters as well. Even when the prophecy of Yoel, he says, I'm going to pour out my Ruach on your sons and your daughters, on your hand servants and your maid servants. And so when I say sons, it means the daughters as well. But he says it does not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we're going to be like him. We're going to be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And he says, and this is 1 Yahuchanan 3 and 3, and every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. So this should be something that is conscious in you daily. Should be a part of your daily alms that you send up unto him, your daily prayers, because you have this hope that when I see him, I'm going to be like him. There's going to be a transition from what we presently know, what we are now, to what we're going to be. Now, trying to understand even the phraseology, sons of Elohim, sons of God, Ben Elohim, just that phraseology. You can be, I can be, even me, in our study or on the surface, and a lot of people are calling themselves sons of God. I'm a son of God. I'm a Ben Elohim. And then they like to go to this verse here in Romans chapter 8 and verse number 14. For as many as are led by the Ruach, right? As many as are led by the Ruach, they are the Ben Elohim. And what it's saying here is the Ruach will lead you and guide you into all truth. It's no different from that. It's going to lead you and guide you into all truth. The Ruach HaKodesh will not lead you into paganism. And so if you have pagan practices in your walk with him, then you're not being led by the Ruach, and you're not a candidate to be a Ben Elohim. Because you want to get Abba Yah upset, you want him to where he's very jealous, start worshiping idols, bring in paganism. Start doing pagan things. That's what he was so upset with Yasharel because of their paganism, pagan practices. He told him, I don't want you to be like those people. I don't want you to be like the Egyptians where you come out of Egypt. I don't want you to be like, so you got to be quiet now. I don't want you to be like all of the other nations that I'm going to lead you into. And he says in Yirmiyahu chapter 10, he says, learn not the way of the heathen. I can't be a Ben Elohim if I'm learning the way of the heathen and if I'm following heathen practices and paganism. It doesn't, we have to understand, it doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter what my title is. That's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what I belong to this organization. I'm wearing this title. Paganism is anti-Yahuwah. That's it. Paganism is anti. I don't care if you speak in tongues every day. I speak in tongues every day. I'm speaking in tongues now. Oh, you ain't speaking. No, I'm speaking in English. Because English is a foreign language to what this book was written in. The voice that came down from the Shamaim was a Hebrew dialect voice. It was a Hebrew language. The first language that was spoken before he divided the nations was the Hebrew language. So anything outside of Hebrew language is another tongue or another language. So I speak in another language. I'm speaking we say English, it's a known language, but I'm speaking in another language. If I'm taking the standard of Torah, and this is where we get off, I'm not saying I'm speaking a heavenly language. I'm saying I'm speaking another language or an unknown language. There's a difference between a heavenly language and then an unknown language or like they say, a language of intelligence. Because on the day of Shavuot, there was a couple of miracles there. The first one was the heavenly language. The second one was a language of earthly intelligence, because they said, hey, how is it that we hear everybody speaking in our native tongue from which we were born? We're hearing all the wonderful works of Elohim. So we have to understand what that is. But it doesn't matter if somebody is what they call speaking in a heavenly language every day. It doesn't. If you don't follow Torah, if you don't follow his voice, if you don't obey his voice, you're not a Ben Elohim. You're not a son of God. You're not a Ben Elohim. And I know a lot of people would throw rocks at me and say, oh, that ain't right. No. And I know that would happen. But let's stay with Torah. Let's stay with Torah, because it says here you have to be led by the Ruach of Elohim. And so in Yahuchanan, which is John, Yahuchanan, chapter 16 and verse number 13, howbeit when he, the Ruach of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth. So if somebody says, I'm being led by the Ruach, where is the Ruach going to lead you? Into all truth. The Ruach is going to lead you into all truth. It ain't going to lead you into paganism. That's not the Ruach. And when you wake up to the Ruach, people repent of that. And they change, because repentance means, not only does it mean sorrow, but it means you have to change. There's a change that comes upon you. I think differently now. My whole life is different now because I repent. Will guide you into all truth, for he will not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, that shall he speak, and he will show you things to come. So if you're being led, like it says in Romans 14 Romans 8:14, as it says there, if you are led by the Ruach, those who are led by the Ruach, it's going to guide you into all truth, and it's going to show you things to come. Those are the ones that are led by the Ruach. It's going to show you things to come, and it makes you a candidate for the transition. It makes you a candidate for the transition. You have others who are not a candidate for the transition. Now, remember what I said, that there's different levels, there's different hierarchy in Yahuwah, and so we have to see that. And some of the teaching I've been doing now, I've been using Shaul and how he looks at Torah, how he looks at Tanakh, how he brings out the Tanakh in his teachings. He brings out the Tanakh in his teaching. And some of the things that Shaul said is, like Kiefer said, hard to be understood now. It's hard to understand what you're saying, Shaul, because I don't know. I know Torah too. In fact, I know Kiefer was saying, I sat at the feet of Yahusha. I want to share, I'm just going to say this, and then we're going to move on. I'm going to say this, we're going to move on. Yahusha had his gospel. Shaul had his gospel. I'm just going to say that. And then we're going to move on, because you're going to see in some of Shaul's writings and his gospel and what he did, slightly different than Yahusha's. He's slightly different, So, and he even told you, according to my gospel. Shaul said that. According to my gospel. Not according to Yahushua's gospel, but according to my gospel. And I know that might throw a wrench out there for some people. Wait a minute, time out. What are you saying? There's two gospel? Oh, gospel is just simply good news. I'm bringing good news and good tidings. So Yahushua brought good tidings. Who did he bring good tidings to? What'd you say? Yahushua brought good tidings to Yasharel. Yahushua brought good tidings to Yasharel. Shaul brought good tidings to Gentiles. Because he even said in the book of Romans, 11th chapter, he says, I am the apostle of and I magnify my. So Shaul was bringing good tidings to the Gentiles. Yahusha was bringing good tidings to Yasharel. So just kind of keep that in mind. And as you do your study and your research and you're digging up some things, because I've been studying Paul and his writings, and as I do study his writings, every time Paul quotes something from Torah or the Tanakh, which is the prophets, every time he quotes something, I go back there and I start reading it in its context, because I think it's very important. If you're studying Shaul's writing, you have to have an understanding of Torah and the Tanakh, and that's why Kepha says, those who are unlearned and unstable, they wrestle with Shaul's writings, his epistles, to their own destruction. So you can take Shaul's writings and think you're in the way all your life until the end or at Judgment Day, and you're going to find out you had his writings, but they were only to your destructions. So, Yahusha had a gospel, Shaul had a gospel. I want to look at, because I think there's some confusion, and so I want to bring this out. Let's go to Genesis, and we looked at this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call out these scriptures. This is Genesis chapter 6, verse number 2. That the sons of Elohim saw the daughters of, notice now, Ben Elohim, right? Ben Elohim. And so what I want to do, I'm just going to tell you at the outset, we're going to look at the Ben Elohim, how we use that phraseology in Torah, and then we're going to compare it to how we see it in Yahusha's speech, because Yahusha didn't write anything, but they wrote things about him, and then Shaul and how he used this. And then, so let's look at Torah phraseology of sons of Elohim. And then let's look at what we call, quote unquote, New Testament. Let's look at how they use the same phraseology as, it's right here, phraseology as Elohim. And then as we go through these scriptures, we're calling up and we're reading it. I want you to think about, and I want you to, how do you see it? How do you see it? Is it the same? Or is there a contrast as we go through this, okay? So this is Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 6. And I'll start with we might as well start with verse 1. Genesis chapter 6, verse 1. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the Ben Elohim saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all they chose. In verse number 3, and Yahuwah said, my Ruach shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Verse number 4, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the Ben Elohim came unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. All right? So this is the first time the phraseology is used in the English dialect, in the English scripture, Ben Elohim. It's the first time it's being used. And as you notice, that it is being used prior to the flood. And so just kind of keep that in mind. I want to go to um, Job. Some call him Job. Chapter 1, verse number 6. Now there was a day when the Ben Elohim came to represent themselves before Yahuwah, and Satan came also among them. And Yahuwah said unto Satan, whence comest thou? Then Satan answered Yahuwah and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. Ben Elohim, sons of God, right? Now let's go to chapter 2, verse number 1. And we're compiling this information, right? So you see the sons of Elohim, Ben Elohim, in the days of Noah, right? Before the flood. Okay? Job chapter 2, verse 1. Again, there was a day when the Ben Elohim came to present themselves before Yahuwah. Now, what do we see common so far? The Ben Elohim, what were they doing in Job here? What's from chapter 1, chapter 2? What's the common thread? They're presenting themselves. They're presenting themselves to Elohim, to Yahuwah, to be exact. They're presenting themselves to Yahuwah Elohim. Now, are these the same Ben Elohim or sons of God prior to the flood? And another question I want to say, did Elohim destroy all of the sons of Elohim that's written in Genesis chapter 6? Was all of them destroyed? They were all destroyed. Okay? And those sons of Elohim were able to procreate. It plainly says that. They were able to procreate. So now here in Job, it's talking about the sons of Elohim. They're presenting themselves before Yahuwah. And again, Satan came also among them to present himself before Yahuwah. And Yahuwah said unto Satan, from whence comest thou? Satan answered, Yahuwah said, from going to and fro in the earth and walking up and down in it. And we know the rest of the story there. But what do you see so far? Are these sons of Elohim, Ben Elohim, sons of God, are they the same as prior to the flood? Were these able to procreate like the others? You don't think so? Okay. Huh? Were they the sons of Seth? Yeah. Or I mean, I don't. The ones that were up in the mountains were the Horites. I think they could have been sons of Shem or Seth. They could have been sons of Seth, which he considered in that bloodline, he considered them as the sons of Elohim because Seth was after Abel was killed, Seth was the chosen one. And it was going to be going through his lineage. But Seth produced, it even says he had sons and daughters. And one thing about Most High Yahuwah, and especially once he chooses you, he ordains you, his selection is made, there is restrictions. There is restrictions that he places on his sons. Just like we seen it in Genesis chapter 6. There was a restriction. One of the things that they violated was because it wasn't that they weren't able to produce. They were able, because we see what happened. It wasn't that they were able to produce. And they had to come from somewhere So that means they had a father and a mother. And they were able to produce. So it was what was placed on him, just like we see in Romans. What did Shaul say? As many as, remember what we read? As many as are led by the Ruach. He's saying those are the Ben Elohim. Those are the sons of God. Has nothing to do with procreation. It has not. What it has to do with is the choosing of the Ruach HaKodesh. It wasn't that they didn't have organs or they couldn't produce or anything like that. We have to look at the selection of the Most High Yah. We have to look at, because we consider ourselves what? Sons of Elohim, right? I consider myself a son of Elohim. So that means there's some restriction. I can't do whatever. If the sons of Elohim, like it says in Genesis 6, if they start going off and disobeying and finding, you might see women of another nation, their gods, all that other stuff, and then you take your selective blood, because it says that he had chosen Seth. His seed was special, and there has a restriction. So when I take that seed and mix it, and then we think Yah is okay with that. Not if you are a Ben Elohim. Not if you're a Ben Elohim. Not if you're a son of Elohim. You can't just go out and sell your wild oats. Just do what you want to do and get with whoever you want to get with. He even told them in Torah, this is where you find your wife. Because you're going to find out that Yahusha is going to find his wife. He's finding his wife as well. So he's telling them where you're supposed to find your wife. Real quick, let's go to Leviticus chapter 18, and I'm going to start at verse number 1. And Yahuwah spake unto Moshe, saying, speak unto the children of Yasharel, and say unto them, I am Yahuwah your Elohim. After the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein ye dwell, shall ye not do. And after the doings of the land of Canaan, whither I bring you, shall ye not do. Neither shall ye walk in their ordinances. Ye shall do my judgments and keep my ordinance to walk therein. I am Yahuwah your Elohim. And it was one of his ordinance was, do not give your daughters to their sons, and don't take their daughters to give to your sons. And why did he tell them that? They're going to turn your heart from them. Just like King Shalom. His downfall was he loved many strange women, and it turned his heart from the Most High Yah. King Daud was a son of Elohim. King Shalom was a son of Elohim. When you see that has anybody got the King James Version, first edition, the 1611? You got one of those? When you open up the book and you first start the first few pages, I don't know how many pages, you get right into it. And you see Adam, and then you see Seth. Did you ever follow that? You should follow that because what it's showing you is the seed and the chosen seed. And that chosen seed, it was very restrictive on what he wanted them to. And I think they did a good job because they followed that chosen seed all the way down. I go, man, this is really interesting how they started with Adam and went to Seth and it went down to Noah, his 3 sons, and then Shem, because he had Noah, his 3 sons, but out of those 3 sons, out of those 3 sons, who did he choose? Shem. the bloodline was protected through Shem, and it went down. It even got to, now Abraham had a lot of different brothers. He had family. He didn't choose them. He chose Abraham. And then Abraham had a lot of sons, but it only was Yishak. He had, well, how many sons? We used to sing that song, Father Abraham. Many sons had Father Abraham. Only one. Only one had that seed. Even in Jacob, now Jacob had, I'm talking about Yishak. Yishak had, or Isaac, had 2 sons. And from Isaac, those 2 sons that he had, Esau and Jacob, their DNA was different. Esau's DNA was different from, how could their DNA be different when it came from the same man, the same woman? He didn't have 2, it was Rebekah. She's the one that gave birth. You had the same father and the same mother, but in that womb you had 2 nations because that chosen seed, the seed all the way back to Seth and Adam, that chosen seed, which you'll see is the sons of Elohim, that's what I'm trying to say. But that chosen seed went to Jacob, not Esau. It's in the DNA. Only Yah could do that. Only Yah could do that. No, those were Isaac's or Yishak's sons. But you see the DNA pattern. But if you ever get a chance to look at that, you can see how they break that down. And they did a real good study and a research on that. But he had always chosen sons of Elohim. So let's look at Genesis chapter 18. And let's start at, I think we went over this real quick. I'm just going to hit this real quick. We'll start at verse 1. Genesis 18, verse 1. And Yahuwah appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. When he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself toward the ground and said, My Adonai, if now I found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee from thy servant. Okay, and he makes a request. But notice in verse number 2, he said 3 men. So the appearance of them were men. And one of them, I'm adding because we don't have time to go through all this, but one of them, Abraham noticed. He noticed one of them. And that's why he was able, because it says, I'll just go ahead and put it out there. It says that Yahuwah had appeared unto him before this. It was an appearance. It says Elohim or Yahuwah appeared unto Abraham before when he first. So he had, this is the same. Now in his understanding, he's thinking it's a man. That's what because that was the appearance of Yah, and it was 2 other men with him. Now let's go to Genesis chapter 19 and verse number 1, because I don't want to go through all 18, because it does say that it says that the 2 left and went to Sodom. It says that in 18. And Yahuwah remained back with Abraham. And that's when he made all those requests. Don't tell me that you'll destroy the whole city if there's 50 righteous. You won't destroy the righteous with the wicked, and yeah. So he goes, but it says the other 2 men left before he started to reason with Yahuwah. Now, and they came, and there came 2, what? To Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. Notice now, there had to be some communication or appearances. I'll just go ahead and say this. It was not uncommon for the chosen seed to see Yahuwah and angels, malaks, down through their life. It wasn't uncommon. Because Lot sat in the gate, which he's seen people come and go all the time. But when these two came, no, there's some. No, these are Malaks. These ain't like all the other. He knew it, so it was. And even with Abraham, even with him, he had appeared to him before. It wasn't uncommon for the chosen seed that he had chosen as the sons of Elohim to see Yahuwah and have him appear unto them. That wasn't uncommon. For us, we would be frightened to death. Like I said the other week, if Yahuwah walked through there, or Yahusha, or Yahuwah, or a Malak walked through that door and appeared unto us, most of us would be shaken, running to the bathroom. I mean, just losing it. Some of us would just be in a daze. We would just we would freeze, just freeze, because it's not common to us like it was with them. They had kind of seen it. It had gone through them before. Even, you ever notice when Samson's father and mother's name? What was his father and mother's name? Manoah? Was one of them Manoah? Anyway, the wife came to her husband and said the angel appeared unto him and everything. It wasn't no really strange occurrence like, well, what did he say? What was the message? Where we would be probably frantic. And I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Because it was kind of it was more of an occurrence to that chosen seed line than it was to a lot of us. We don't really see it. Was it Manoah? Yeah. So we don't really get to see. We don't get to see Malaks, or we might see a stranger, and then we entertain. It instructs us, don't, be careful when you entertain angels, or be careful when you entertain strangers, because you might be entertaining angels unaware. But anyway, the angels went. So there's a distinction between these men and the Ben Elohims, the sons of God, right? So I'm trying to get all of the sons of God in Torah. And it appears, I got them all, I think. Oh, one I missed, Job 38:7. Let's get that one real quick. Job 38:7. When the morning stars sang together and all the Ben Elohim shouted for joy. Now, who are these? Because that's when he's creating everything, right? And he's saying the sons of Elohim, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy. Huh? They witnessed it, huh? So were these the sons of Elohim like in Genesis 6 that were able to procreate? Not. This, that kind of throws a curve at us. I mean, I can see a distinction between the son of Elohim and the angels, the Malaks. I can see a difference between the Malaks and the Ben Elohims. I can see a difference there. But now you're saying the sons of Elohim were there at the beginning when everything was created. We're looking at, the sons of Elohim rejoiced. They sang together. They shouted for joy. Now I can see the morning stars singing together, the morning stars being the Malaks, right? I can see them being the Malaks, but then the sons of Elohim, right? So let's go to, let's see what Shaul is saying in Romans chapter 8 and verse number 18. I'm going to read 19. 18 and 19. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creature waited for the manifestation of the sons of Elohim. So the creature is waiting for a manifestation, a revealing of the sons of Elohim. Is this the sons of Elohim that was way back then? Are they waiting to see those sons of Elohim before the flood, the sons of Elohim after the flood? Are they, which sons of Elohim are they waiting to see? Well, the creature is waiting for the manifestation of the sons of Elohim. And Shaul, later on, he explains what that is. Remember we read in 1 Yahuchanan, chapter 3, verse 1, remember we read that? And it says the love that Yahuwah has for us, right? As the Ben Elohim, and it does not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when we see him, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is, which is a pronunciation of something that's so glorious that the world has never seen this before. The world has never seen, because the way Shaul is about to explain it. Okay, let's just go and see how he's going to explain it. Okay, now who knows where I'm going first? Who knows where I'm going? Because Shaul explains this. Who knows where I'm going? All right, let's go to 1 Corinthians. Somebody knows now. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Somebody knows now. Right? Let's look at let's start at verse number 49. We'll start there. Now, how Shaul explains this is a bit more detailed than Yahuchanan. Because Yahuchanan says, well, he loves us, and it does not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we're going to be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Now, Shaul goes into some description here. He's very descriptive with it. And this is verse number 49. I'm going to read down a few verses. And as we have borne the image, notice now, as we have borne the image of the earthy, we shall also bear the image of the heavenly. So listen to what he's saying. If the earthly, we already know about the earthly. All we got to do is look in the mirror. And we see the earthly. But he's saying, just like you look at me, you see the earthly, you're going to see the heavenly. You're going to see the image that is going to be from the Shamaim. Okay, now verse number 50. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Elohim. Neither does corruption inherit incorruption. So when he talks about the kingdom of Elohim, and we hear a lot about the teaching of Yahusha, and he talks about the kingdom of Elohim and those who are born again, that's the only way you can enter. Remember he said that in Yahuchanan chapter 3? Marvel not that I say you must be born again. Unless you're born again, you cannot see the kingdom. Unless you're born again of water and ruach, you can't what? Enter in. So, and then now we're getting to get to more descriptive details here. Now I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Elohim. Neither doth corruption inherit incorruption. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. Now, Shaul, as we go on and read here, Shaul is going to dig up something that a prophet had said in prophecy. Shaul's going to dig it up. That's why anybody who just wants to study Shaul's writings without Torah or the Tanakh, you're just going to be twisted and tangled up and tied up and arrested. He says, notice now, we shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. What do you think he's talking about? What do you think he's talking about? Okay, let's listen. In a moment, In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. Those who are alive, those who are alive that are not only walking after the Ruach, but have been born of the Ruach, because that puts you into that lineage of the Ben Elohims. Somebody that has not been regenerated is not in that line of Ben Elohim or the sons of Elohim. You have to have that regeneration, and not only that regeneration, but there's a required walk, because you got to walk with him. You got to hear his voice. You got to obey his commandments. You got to keep his Torah. The Ruach is not going to lead you into disobedience. Here comes the commands, and the Ruach is going to tell you, oh, you don't have to obey those. That's not his Ruach. That's not his Ruach. He ain't going to give you the commands and then tell you don't have to keep them. That's not his Ruach. So it says, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. And we know that there's 7 trumpets in Revelation. At the last trump. There's a lot of things, all those trumpets, all those periods of time must happen and come to pass. But at that last one, for that trumpet shall sound, speaking of that last trump in Revelation, and that's when the dead shall be raised, and like it says in a moment 12, incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Verse 53, for this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written. Who knows where he went? No, Shaul. In this, where did he go? Because notice what he says. Then shall be brought to pass the saying. That's when this prophecy will be fulfilled. And this prophecy will not be fulfilled till that last trump. So we got to go back. We're going to go back, and we're going to go back and look at that prophet and that prophecy. Saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. Now notice how Shaul writes it, or at least the translation into English. I mean, we got a translation of a translation, but notice how it's translated into English. Now, for me, a lot of times we say, well, Paul didn't quote it exactly the way it is. I'm leaning towards Paul didn't quote it like that. It's just in translation we start to lose some of it, because they translated it first. You have the Greek translation, then you have the Latin translation, then you have the English translation. So now we've got a translation of a translation. So just like we used to play that game, you tell one person something in their ear and it goes around the room. By the time it gets over here, the guy who said it or the person who said it says, that ain't what I said at all. What did you hear? So I think Shaul did quote it right, and we're going to go look at it, but just the way it's translated so many times. So he says here, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. And people get this so confused, because as soon as you say law in translation, the only thing they think of is the Mosaic law, Moshe's law. But Shaul taught that. He taught that. He told us even in Romans chapter 7, he says, I found another law in my members, and it wars against the law, because in my flesh is the law of sin. And it's that law of sin in my flesh that I can't let have dominion over me. That's why he says in chapter 6, you don't let sin have dominion over this this body. Okay, so the sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. Now let's go back and get that. Let's go back and get that prophecy. Huh? No, Hosea. Well, let's go to Hosea 13:9, because this is where, this is where he gets it from. Hosea 13:9, and we're going to read down. O Yasharel, thou hast destroyed thyself, but in me is thine help. I will be thy king. Where is any other that may save thee in all thy cities? And thy judges of whom thou saidest, give me a king and a prince. I gave thee a king in my anger, and took him away in my wrath. The iniquity of Ephraim is bound up, his sin is hid. The sorrows of a travailing woman shall come upon him. He is an unwise son, for he should not stay long in the place of the breaking forth of children. Verse number 14. I will ransom them from the power of what? The grave. Now, in English, we see grave, but if you look at this in the Hebrew, he says Sheol, Sheol. Latin, they call it, or Roman Latin, the Greeks, well, I think it started in Greeks, and then the Latins pick it up, but they call it Hades. Hades, because Hades is their god, their Elohim of the underworld. So they call it Hades. In the Hebrew, we call it Sheol. Sheol. In English, they call it grave. I will ransom them from the power of the grave. What is that? Ransom? Who paid the ransom? And what did he do? Because he even says in that 15th chapter of 1 Corinthians, the last thing he's going to destroy is death. So he says, I will ransom them. Notice now, them. Because we want to make this all inclusive, but it's not. It's not. Remember, Most High Yah is very selective. When he says, I will ransom them from the power of the grave, I will redeem them from death. Listen how he says it. O death, I will be thy plagues. O grave, I will be thy destruction. Repentance shall be hid from mine eyes. So he's saying here, he says, I will ransom them from the power of the grave. I will redeem them from death. O death, I will be thy plagues. O grave, I will be thy destruction. Now let's go back to 1 Corinthians and how he says it. When he says it in verse number, let's start 54. So when this corruptible shall put on incorruption, and this mortal shall put on immortality, this shall be brought to pass the saying that is written. He quotes Hosea. Death is swallowed up in victory. Now, how did he get death is swallowed up in victory? Because the Most High Yah says, I will ransom thee from the grave. And he says here, death is swallowed up in victory. Then he goes on and say, oh, death, where is thy sting? In Hosea, he says, oh, death, I will be your plague. I'm going to plague death. So how is he going to plague death? How is the Most High Yah going to plague death? He's going to have victory over it. He's going to gather out of the grave those selected ones. He's going to plague the grave with, I'm pulling this one, I'm getting this one, I'm getting this one, I'm getting this one. He's going to, when it talks about the plague is something that spreads in death. Now, a misinterpretation is that he's redeeming everybody from the grave. which he's not redeeming everybody from the grave, because he says them. He didn't say, oh, I'm going to redeem all from it. No, them. Them. So there's a selection process that he's doing. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? So the selection from death, and Shaul says it's going to be quickly at the last trump, when the last trump sounds. Now, we that are alive, what's going to happen? The transition is going to happen, he says, in a moment, twinkling of an eye. And ain't nobody going to be able to repent. The repentance is over. I repent. No. That's why he says the last trump. And it's like when we play basketball or some other sport, when you're playing a sport game on time, and you hear that buzzer go off, anything that comes after that don't count. It don't count. It's just once that buzzer sounds, that's it. That's the end. Whatever the score is, that's the end. And when that trumpet sounds, those who are ready, that are alive, the transition is going to happen right away. This is what Shaul was talking about, the glory that's going to be revealed in us. Mainly because when you die and there's death, you pass through a portal or a dimension. You pass through a dimension. To come back from that dimension, you're coming back in a different body. You cannot come back with the same body that you go to the grave with. You're going to have a different body. And the transition is going to be quick. It's going to happen. Those in the grave are going to come up. Those who are alive are going to be changed instantly. Our transformation from mortal to immortality. We take on a new body. That new body, and so before I say something about that new body, those who pass through to the dimension of death, in order for them to come back to this dimension, they have to come back in a totally different body. Yeah, and that's some kind of made up. It's not that body, because when you come back from that death, from that dimension of death, this is what Yahusha says. Matthew chapter 22 and verse number 29. Matthew 22:29. These are the ones that come back from that dimension of death. Yahusha answered and said unto them, Ye do err, not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of Elohim. For in the resurrection, how's she doing up there? She's doing all right. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but what are they like? But are as the angels or malak of Elohim in the Shamayim. So when those come back from the dimension of death, you're coming back as what? Like a malak, to where that transition from death back into this dimension of life, you're made differently. You're not made to procreate. They won't. For us who are changed instantly, in a moment, in twinkling of an eye, boom, we're transitioned. The grave's open there. We come back. We're coming back with a different body. We're coming back as the malak. We're not coming back with the type of body where we'll be desiring, because as a malak, there would be no interest in marriage or getting married or anything. We've already done that. No, you won't be able. Well, Satan, he got kicked out of the Shamayim. Well, what I'm trying to say is the sons of Yah are different from the Malaks. That's what I'm trying to show. The sons of Yah are different from Malak. Because you had the sons of Yah. The sons of Yah were able to procreate. Yeah, we won't. No, See, notice you have to see the seed. The seed. And how was the seed? So let's go back to Genesis 6 and verse number 2. Genesis 6 and 2. Let's look at that again. Then the Ben Elohim, or sons of Yah. Now let's look up that word sons, which is in the Hebrew 11:21. 11:21. And in Hebrews, or it's in the ancient Hebrew lexicon Bible, it's 10:36. A and N, when you see that A and N, you have to use it in that context, because you can have the same word and it could be used differently. So, but you have to see it in the context. So I want to show you something tonight. It's very important that we understand the context. Otherwise, you can use a word and use it out of context, and you can be thrown off, way off. So here, in the context, it's A and N. The root word, B-N or Ben, means to build, tent panel, intelligence. That's the root meaning of it. But we want to go down to A and N. So I go down to A, tent panel. There are many similarities between building a tent out of goat hair panels and building of the house of sons. The idea of building a house with sons can be seen in Genesis 30 and 3. Just as the tent panels are added to continue the tent, sons born to the family to continue the family line. Just as the tent is continually being renewed with new panels, the family is continually being renewed with new sons. Okay, so here's sons. This is the context in which it's being used. One who continues the family line. Now, Yahusha says when we come back from that dimension of death, we're going to be like the Malaks, which we'll neither be marrying or giving in marriage, because that once. Remember when Samuel was in the grave and Saul went to the witch of Endor to wake him up and woke him up and everything? He had not passed through that dimension to where we are now, because if he did pass through, he would come back as a Malak. He wouldn't have to worry about being resurrected. See, and that's why he cut Saul off. He said, what you doing messing with because there's some powerful witches out there now. There's people that can mess with that spiritual realm. That's why he told us, y'all, don't suffer a witch to live. Put it out now. Put that fire out. Don't even have them in the camp. If I know you a witch, don't come up in here. We don't have nothing to do with you. Not a witch, not a warlock. And they've come around. I've had somebody came around here and said he was a warlock and everything. Well, just keep that outside. you know, I don't need you up here. I don't even want to mess with that. That's what got Shaul cut off. So, but it was a powerful witch, the witch of Endor, because she was able to wake up Samuel while he was sleeping. He said, why'd you wake me up? I was resting good. Why you come waking me up? And so if he would have transitioned or came through that dimension of death back to life, he would have to come back as a Malak. He wouldn't come back as he was. So when those who come back from the grave and come through that dimension of death into life, they're going to be like the Malaks. That's what Yahusha said. Oh, when they come back in the resurrection, they're going to be like the Malaks. They won't be marrying or giving in marriage. Does that mean there won't be no procreation on the earth? No, it's not saying that. Because he said he promised Abraham through his seed. Through his seed. And it was going to go on forever. Yasharel as a nation will continue to increase through procreation. But for us, we're going to be like the Malaks. We won't have to worry about any of that. Once we pass through that dimension, we won't have to worry about that. But you still will have Yasharel, and you'll still have this, sons who are procreating. He even says in Isaiah, he says, a child on the new heaven, new earth, a child will be, or a baby will be how old and still a baby? 100. How old is your baby? 100? Still a baby. That's a long time to be carrying a car seat around and putting them up in a high chair and feeding them 100 years. That's because, remember, Methuselah, 969 years. I mean, that type of life longevity is coming back. That's coming back on the new earth, the new heaven and new earth. That's coming back. It's going to be, it's, one thing Yahusha said when he told him repent, he says, I want you to think differently. you gotta, that's a part of repentance, is thinking differently. Because we've never had it planned out or shown us how things are going to happen, because a lot of times we think it's just going to end and that's it, just like the credits of a movie. I heard somebody say, this was years ago, I heard somebody say, well, can you explain what's going to happen when Yahusha returns? You know, and the answer was, well, we're going to go to heaven. And they said, well, do what? We're just going to be around the throne singing and praising and worshiping. For eternity? For eternity. And the person's going like, you know, is that it? That's it? And that's what we thought. There's going to be heaven or hell. Either you're going to be up in heaven, you know, throughout eternity, or you're going to be in hell burning throughout eternity. But that's not how the book teaches it. If you hear the voice of Yah, he don't teach it like that. Why would he make a new heaven and a new earth and procreate it if there wasn't supposed to be any? He's had sons of Elohim even from the beginning, and their purpose. Well, Adam was a son of Elohim, was he not? And it was told him to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And he was a son of Elohim. In fact, he had the ability to produce before he ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He was producing, which means he had it within him to reproduce, and he had eternal life because he wasn't built to die. He had a body that was able to, he enjoyed his wife. I don't believe that Most High Yah gave him his wife and they didn't do nothing. I don't believe that. Because when he looked at her, he said, whoa, man. Because it said that Most High Yah presented the woman to him. And he gave her a name because she was the mother of all living. So he gave her a name. So you can't tell me Yah made this woman and within an hour, because if I know Adam and something was going on, but within an hour, Satan came to her and said, hey, y'all see that tree over there? Don't y'all know y'all? Because they took care of the garden. So they dressed it, they took care of it and everything. Because it was a woman that told them, oh, yeah, the tree of knowledge, we're not supposed to touch it or eat of it. And that's not what he said. He didn't say don't touch it. He says just don't eat of it. She says we can't touch it at all or eat of it. So there was some time that went through there before Satan talked to her, and you can't tell me Adam wasn't doing nothing. I don't believe that. I believe they was husband and wife, just like he said, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, and Adam got busy. He got busy. But his seed that he was producing sons of Elohim. He was producing those sons of Elohim, and they were all in the earth. And then you had the fall. And after the fall, here comes death. Death came on him. Did he have any seed or sons of Elohim after the fall? Oh yeah, yeah. He had he had he had sons after the fall. So those sons after the fall, do you think they had the same type of seed in them as the seeds before the fall? I think the seed was a little different because what did Adam put in everybody? Where did sin come from? Whose seed? From Adam. So the sin was in that seed. So now everything he's producing has the law of sin in it. Has the law of sin and death in it now. Because he's sinned and got into it. That's what Romans said. It said sin entered in the world through Adam. That's what he says in Romans 5, I think. Sin came in through the world through Adam. So when you talk about the law of sin, that was given unto us. But there were sons of Elohim that did not have the law of sin in them. But what passed on them, even though they did not, because it says it in Romans. Maybe we should have read Romans 5. Because Shaul understood it. Because they had to die even though they didn't have the judgment of sin on them. So you had sons of Elohim that are able to procreate. It says here, one who continues the family line. When used in, okay, son, children, old, first, man, young, stranger, people. And we want to use this in its context, because if it's not used in its context, then you can be talking about something totally different. Now, I'm going to quit on this because my time is up. I'm going to finish up here. But I just want to show you, how important it is to keep things in context. There's a lot of different examples we can use. Maybe I should use another one. I don't know. Huh? I'm going to use, okay. Let me say this. This is a quote from Aristotle. Can I quote something from Aristotle? I mean, Shaul quoted Epimenides, and it's in our book. So I'm going to quote Aristotle. Okay? An educated mind will entertain an idea without accepting it. That's what Aristotle said. Huh? A grain of salt? What do you mean by? Yeah. So let me share something with you, because and we just, that's why it's so important to keep things in its context, because it could be misused. All right. And this might empower women. We're outnumbered right now. We're outnumbered, so we're going to empower women. All right. Let's go to, I'm going to finish up here before I get stoned. Exodus chapter 6, and look at verse number 2. And I mean, we can do a series of teaching on this. Series of teaching. Exodus 6 and 2 and 3. And Elohim spake unto Moshe and said unto him, I am Yahuwah. So he's introducing himself to him. And I appeared unto Abram, unto Yishak, and unto Jacob by El Shaddai. But by my name Yahuwah was I not known to them. Now, I'm just going to say this. If you take Exodus 6 here and you go retro back to Genesis 1 and 1, every time you see Yahuwah in there, the writer is talking after this introduction, because nobody knew him as Yahuwah. Never knew him. So they didn't know him as. How did they know him as? There was no personal name like, I'm going to call you Yahuwah. They didn't have it. They didn't have his name, Yahuwah. The only thing they had El Shaddai. And they had some other Els. But let's look at verse number 3. Verse number 3, and I want to go to definitions, and I'm going to look up the word Almighty. It says Almighty in English, but in the Hebrew, it's H7706. H7706. Okay? This is Shaddai or Shaddai. Shaddai, Shaddai. Shaddai, Shaddai. Depends. Some people pronounce it a little different. But this, look at what the root word is. The root word means breast. The pictograph, and it gives you that the letter, is a picture of two front teeth. And the door is a picture of a tent door that dangles down. Combine these means two that dangle. So we gotta use it. We gotta use it in its context now, because if you just say Shaddai, okay. So look at the context. We have to go to A and F. A and F. So we go down to A, Shaddai. It is breast. Breast could be demon, a goat demon from the teats of the goat. So we want to go harem. We want to go down to F, and here's F right here. Shaddai, Shaddai means, it's from the root word breast, and it means Almighty. Almighty. So that's how Yah explained. Now, why do you think in the Hebrew, in the pictograph Hebrew, why do you think it comes from this concept? Nurturer. He was their nurturer. So that's how if it wasn't for him nurturing from Adam to Seth to Abraham to Yishak, Yaakov, he nurtured them all along. And so he has to use something that we can relate to, because he has to appear unto us. He has to be revealed. We would never know Abba Yahuwah. I learned him through some of the gardening, because he was an agriculturalist. He talks a lot about the seed and the planting of the seed and the broadcast, casting out. I mean, he talks about how the seed has to go into the ground and die before it can bring life. Death before life. And then how he talks about leaven. There's a lot of things he talks about that where he can reveal himself to us. So when we look at how a child has to be nurtured, they didn't have all this stuff that we have now. A child's life depended on the mother's breast. You take away the mother's breast, the child would die. And so that's how he appeared unto his children. He says, I'm like the mother's breast. I'm El Shaddai. I'm nurturing you. I've nurtured you. I mean, that's why when they seen Yahusha, they said, blessed are the paps who gave you son. Yahusha's, because from the Hebrew mindset, the nurturing of life comes from the woman's breast. And so he said, that's what I am to you. He says, I didn't give you my personal name. They didn't know my personal name. They knew me as the nurturer, as the Almighty. I'm the one that has given you life and that has sustained you all the way. So, but what did Yahusha say when they said, blessed are the paps that give you son? What did Yahusha say? Nay, rather, but blessed is him that hears the word of Yah and what? And do it and keeps it. Those are the ones that are blessed. So he just takes it a little further. But this is why it's important to use it in its context and its understanding. So and I look at what he's talking about with the sons of Elohim and how they were able to procreate, and they did, and the people that they produced, when it says men of renown and giant men, it wasn't that they were 10 feet tall. Not saying they didn't have people like that. But this book is a Hebrew perspective because it's a Hebrew Elohim given to a Hebrew people. And it talks about his relationship starting with Adam, Seth, and going all the way down to Noah. Methuselah's in there. Enoch is in there. Enoch, Methuselah, Noah, Shem, and if you follow, it just breaks it all down. And that's his relationship with that seed. So my time's up. It's 9 o'clock. My time's up. But I'm going to bring all this to a close because what Shaul was talking about and what Yahukanan was talking about, how we're waiting for something that's going to be more glorious, that the suffering in this time just does not compare to what's going to be revealed. Because if it happens tonight, if that trumpet sounds tonight, and we're changed in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, we'll be with him, we'll be maneuvering, going around. We won't be restricted to this wall. We won't be restricted to ascending. We won't be able to, because we're going to be like the Malaks. We're going to be taken, if you allow me to say, we're going to be taken to a higher level. We're going to be taken to a higher level. And we won't ever have to worry about death again. Now, is there going to be people living? Well, yeah, because Yasharel as a nation is going to reign over the whole world. This whole world is going to have a reset. It's going to have a reset. And we're right on the precipice of this reset that's going to happen. So are there going to be, he's going to have judgment on nations. A lot of people are going to die, but there's going to be people who are going to live, and there's going to be nations because those nations are going to serve Yasharel. Why would he have them as a nation to be served by other nations if nobody's here? I'm just going to wipe out everything. Nobody's going to be here. That's not how it's going to be. There is going to be a hierarchy with them. It's just, where do you want to, what Kepha said, one thing that Kepha said was in 2 Kepha 2 and verse number 21, he says, for it had been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness than after they have known to turn from the holy commandment delivered unto them. So it's, now that I know and I've heard it, I can't go back. It's better for me not to have known. It's better for me not to have known the way of righteousness, truth, or anything than to know it and then turn from it. Because the end of that person is going to be worse than what it is now. And, I mean, there's just so many things pointing to other nations. Even when you study Matthew 25, there's so many things pointing to other nations. And then in Isaiah 66, how every Shabbat, feast days, we'll be leading people. Here, you don't want to keep the Shabbat? Hey, come here. We're going to take them over there. These are all people that transgress. So there's going to be a place to where they'll be able to see those who transgress against them and who are disobedient. Those who are on earth. Now for us, we've gone through that dimension. So when we come back, we're going to be like the Malaks. Okay, there's a lot. I can go on and on for a while, but we'll end it here, because we haven't even talked about the rich man and Lazarus. I mean, there's just so much that Yahusha's given us that we can deal with. There's dimensions. There's this present earth. There's a time on this present earth. He's going to scroll and roll it back. He's making a new heaven and a new earth. It's going to be populated. There's going to be nations. Israel's going to be on top. You got the 1,000 years reign where he's going to build his kingdom. Yahshua is going to be. You have those who make it through tribulation or who doesn't take the mark. They get to reign with him for the 1,000 years. We, those who transition, we get to reign with him forever. Forever. We get to reign with him forever. 1,000 years of peace, and then on the new heaven and new earth. There won't be no more dying for us. No more dying. No more dying. So we don't have to worry about that. But anyway, all right. I don't see any questions or comments out there. We're just going to end this up. I'm going to say shalom, shalom. Oh, man. So we'll just say shalom, shalom. There will be Sabbath class here on this Shabbat. We will have our Sabbath service right here. And next week we won't have a Torah study on Wednesday. Won't be no Torah study on Wednesday. But we will have one. But we will have service on the Shabbat. This Shabbat, next Shabbat, every Shabbat we'll have a service. So we'll be here. So we're going to say shalom, shalom. Thank you all for joining. And